So I thought I'd face you after reading that book, and I hope you enjoyed it. It was sort of warts and all, and there were things that I did that I could have done better. There's ways I behaved that weren't very nice, but I can't really regret things when life is as good as it is now. So, and maybe it wouldn't be if the path had been in any other direction or in any other way. So, um, what I will do, as I wrote at the back of the book here, from then till now, and I wrote this book published it in 2015, although I'd started making the notes for it many years before. So the from then till now was written many years ago as well. So I'll update that probably just by speaking to you in a moment after I've read this. So from then till now, the notes that eventually led to the writing of this book were finished over 3 years ago. Since that time, Stephen and I have attended our first funeral in Portugal, and one of our cats now lies in the garden, a short distance from where we buried Patricia. One of the friends who visited in that first year sold her house in the UK and bought a larger property a 10-minute walk from ours. Stephen once again performed concerts for the first time since we have been together, and I am teaching English again. My own foreign language has now reached a level which allows me to read novels in Portuguese without much difficulty, but I still actively study the language from time to time. Both Stephen and I can communicate in Portuguese more than adequately now, and we exchange pleasantries or banter with Portuguese friends at least once every day. Present indicators suggest that the country's political and economic reforms made under a new government and the watchful eye of the European Monetary Fund, the World Bank and the European Central Bank, Troika, are working. However, we know several people who have had to find work in other countries, and I hope that the emotional cost families are paying for a more competitive Portuguese economy does not prove to be too high. Stephen and I are on a more secure financial footing than before. And no small part of this is due to our friends and neighbours who have taught us many things about living in the environment we have chosen. We have just planted our third crop of potatoes, onions, tomatoes and peppers. The basic vegetables have become staple crops for us now, and the produce is stored and benefited from throughout the year. For me, the advice given, the kindness shown and friendship offered by people such as Manuel, the Major and Maria, are a compensation for the parents I no longer have. And with luck, the story I am part of will continue to be a happy one. But whatever happens, there is now a written account of the time I started living again. So, yes, if that was 3 years after I made the West, that was written in 2015. It's now 11 years on from that. And Stephen and I no longer live in the village of Bardabenge or the town of Miranda de Corvo. We've been living in Sori now for almost 5 years. It was a hard decision to move. And initially we planned to move to another small village here, but town life suits us. Our friend that I mentioned who had sold up in the UK and moved to Portugal 10 minutes from us, she took us under her wing. She was an elderly lady and moved here when she was almost 80, and she passed on and lucky enough looked after Stephen and I very well. And Manuel T also passed on a couple of years ago, but something Stephen and I get great comfort from is that he actually came to see our apartment here the year that we bought it and before we'd started living here. And he had a pea soup at Tea Maria's with us over lunchtime. It was amazing. He was just so surprised about how much life was going on in town here compared with the village where he saw out his days. And I think he understood perfectly why Stephen and I had chosen this environment to live in. It was probably more like the life he grew up with when he was young. In the villages, there was so much life around, and the towns themselves, it's more of a hustle and bustle and more activity, more commerce. And so, yeah, he understood it. But yeah, we get great pleasure out of thinking that he knew where we were and where we had settled. And yeah, his expressions as we sat at Timorese and he looked around at the big buildings, couldn't believe like how imposing they were. So that's a lovely memory to have. And yeah, I mean, Stephen and I, we we probably speak more Portuguese now than we did when we lived in the village, despite seeing people every day, because here we see more people every day and we have more conversations. We actually went back to Barbenge, our village in Miranda de Corval, 2 weeks ago today. It's the first time we've been back for ages, and we saw the likes of Manel J, who gets mentioned in the book. Uh, we saw Manel T's, one of Manel T's daughters, Manuel and Marie, Manel Maria, the Major and Maria, they've passed on, but we saw their daughter Lourdes, and we saw another couple of neighbours as well that had lived next door to our friend Les. So it was wonderful to see them. It was quite amazing. I said we haven't actually spent any time speaking to them since we moved out, really. We've passed through Barbenge a couple of times, only a couple of times in the past 5 years. But it was the first time we went there deliberately just to spend time with them. And it was wonderful. I actually took them copies of those four people, copies of my book that is translated into Portuguese, and that's so much of the stories in there comes from listening to them, and it's based on life around the village there and around Miranda de Corval. I thought it was a nice idea to give them the book, and they seemed to take it in the spirit that was given and seemed to be really happy. So God knows what they'll think of it, but if they even get to read it, but that doesn't matter. They accepted the book and they seemed happy. And the same as here in Sori at the book fair. And the weeks following, I think I must have sold about 30 copies of the book. And although I've only had feedback from two people, uh, again, that's not even the important thing. It's just a sign of how much we accepted the fact that even if these people don't read the book, they wanted to buy it and show support for me and for Stephen and for us being in town. So, and part of their life. So we're very, very lucky. Something which I don't know if it comes across in the book or not is that we generally try to avoid having friendships with English speaking people. And I've often commented to Stephen that maybe that makes us seem standoffish. And I think anyone that knows us knows we're not like that. But it'd be easier for people just to have a passing acquaintance with us and we chat to and then have nothing else to do with again. It would be easier for them to think that we're maybe slightly above ourselves or whatever than that, but we're not at all. And it's just a case of, for us, speaking Portuguese is so important, and we also like our own time to do what we want to do. And if there's the option of speaking with English people and you spend time doing that, you're taking away the time that you have to speak with Portuguese people. And so that's why we make those decisions. But everyone's different, and that's just us. I just want to say that I really hope that no one ever thinks that we think we're better than anyone else. We certainly don't, and we know we're not. So there you go. Just different, as we all are. Okay, then. I think that's it. So I'll read out something else another recording soon. It's a blog that I wrote a few years or a couple of years ago now that you might find interesting. Okay, bye for now.